Hey there, economic survivors and financial freedom fighters. It's your host, the boss of economics, back to slice through the government's latest pile of policy garbage and expose the Fed's masterful display of economic incompetence. Buckle up, folks, because today we're diving headfirst into the dumpster fire of 2025's economic outlook. Spoiler alert, it's a government-made mess, and you're the one paying for it. Oh, what a time to be alive, folks. The Federal Reserve, that sacred institution of economic wisdom, insert sarcastic eye roll here, has once again proven that when the going gets tough, the tough sit on their hands and whistle. On Monday, May 19, 2025, New York Fed Chief John Williams and his merry band of central bankers gathered at the Mortgage Bankers Association conference to deliver a message that can only be described as the monetary policy equivalent of a shrug emoji. It's not going to be that in June 2025 we're going to understand what's happening here, or in July 2025, Williams said, basically admitting that the Fed has no idea what's going on and plans to do even less about it. And it's not just Williams. Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic, Minneapolis Fed President Neel Kashkari, and Fed Vice Chair Philip Jefferson all chimed in with the same tired tune, wait and see. Wait and see. Are you kidding me? This isn't a weather forecast, folks, this is the US economy, and it's teetering on the edge of a cliff while the Fed plays a game of economic Jenga, hoping the whole thing doesn't come crashing down. Now, let's break this down, because behind this wait-and-see nonsense lies a deeper, uglier truth. The Fed's paralysis is a direct result of the Trump administration's chaotic trade policies and the government's broader mismanagement of the economy. And guess who's paying the price? You, me, and every hard-working American trying to survive this government-induced economic Hunger Games. Let's peel back the layers of this economic onion, folks, and see what's really stinking up the joint. From the surface-level Fed inaction to the deeper systemic failures, here's the boss economics breakdown of what's going wrong. The Fed's latest messaging is clear: don't expect any interest rate cuts before September 2025, and even then, it's a maybe. Investors are betting on less than a 10% chance of a rate cut at the June 17, 2025, meeting, and futures markets are now pricing in just 2 quarter-point reductions by year-end, down from 4 expected just a month ago. Translation: the Fed is scared stiff, and they're hiding behind data collection and uncertainty as excuses for doing nothing. But let's be real, folks, this isn't just about uncertainty. This is a crisis of confidence. The Fed is terrified of making the wrong move, and why wouldn't they be? Inflation is still a lurking monster, unemployment risks are rising, and consumer spending is showing cracks. Just look at the latest data. As of April 2025, U.S. consumer credit card delinquencies hit 3.2%, the highest level since 2011, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. Meanwhile, retail sales growth slowed to a measly 0.1% month-over-month in April 2025, per the U.S. Census Bureau, signaling that Americans are tightening their belts. And yet, the Fed thinks it's in a good place with its slightly restrictive policy. Are you kidding me? This is like a doctor saying, well, your heart's still beating, so I guess we're doing fine, while you're in the middle of a heart attack. Now, let's dig a little deeper, because the Fed's paralysis isn't happening in a vacuum. The real elephant in the room is the Trump administration's ongoing trade war, which has turned the global economy into a geopolitical piñata. The Fed's own officials, like Neel Kashkari, admitted that tariffs have thrown policymakers a curveball. A curveball. More like a flaming wrecking ball, folks. The Trump administration recently reached a temporary agreement with China to lower tariffs on some imported goods, but negotiations are still dragging on halfway through a 90-day pause on reciprocal levies. And what's the result? Pure economic chaos. Businesses can't plan, consumers are paying higher prices, and the uncertainty is choking economic growth. Just look at the numbers. The U.S. Manufacturing PMI, Purchasing Managers Index, dropped to 47.8 in April 2025, signaling contraction for the third straight month, according to the Institute for Supply Management. Meanwhile, the Congressional Budget Office estimates that Trump's tariffs have already cost the average American household $1,300 annually in higher prices as of 2024, with no relief in sight for 2025. And here's the kicker, folks. Raphael Bostic admitted that if trade negotiations drag on into the summer of 2025, we won't actually know what the true effects are going to be for several months after that. Several months? Are you serious? This is economic malpractice on a grand scale. The government's reckless trade policies are holding the economy hostage, and the Fed is just sitting there, twiddling its thumbs, while the rest of us suffer. Now, let's get to the root of the problem, folks, because this isn't just about the Fed or tariffs, it's about the government's systemic failure to manage the economy. The Trump administration's obsession with protectionism, combined with its refusal to address structural issues like wage stagnation, healthcare costs, and infrastructure decay, has pushed the U.S. economy to the brink of recession. And don't take my word for it, look at the data. The Conference Board's leading economic index, a key predictor of economic downturns, fell by 0.6% in April 2025, marking 6 consecutive months of declines. Historically, this kind of sustained drop has preceded every U.S. recession since the 1970s. Meanwhile, the federal deficit ballooned to $2.5 trillion in fiscal year 2024, according to the U.S. Treasury Department, thanks to tax cuts that disproportionately benefited corporations and the ultra-wealthy, while doing nothing to stimulate broad-based growth. And what about infrastructure? The American Society of Civil Engineers gave U.S. infrastructure a D+ grade in its 2025 report, estimating a $2.6 trillion investment gap over the next decade. But instead of fixing bridges or building high-speed rail, the government is busy slapping tariffs on Chinese goods and calling it a win. This isn't leadership, folks, this is economic sabotage. Now, let's talk about the real victims here, because it's not the Fed officials sipping champagne at their fancy conferences, and it's not the politicians patting themselves on the back for tough trade deals. It's you, me, and every American trying to make ends meet in this government-made mess. Small businesses are getting crushed by higher input costs due to tariffs. U.S. small business confidence hit a 12-year low in April 2025, according to the National Federation of Independent Business. Workers are seeing their wages stagnate while inflation eats away at their purchasing power. Real average hourly earnings grew by just 0.2% year-over-year in April 2025, per the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And consumers? They're drowning in debt, with total U.S. household debt hitting a record $17.5 trillion in Q1 2025, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. This is the human cost of government mismanagement, folks, and it's only going to get worse if the Fed keeps playing wait and see while the Trump administration keeps swinging its tariff hammer. We're not just on the brink of a recession, we're on the brink of a full-blown economic crisis, and the government is driving the bus straight off the cliff. So, what's the takeaway, folks? The Fed's paralysis, the tariff chaos, and the looming recession risk are all symptoms of a deeper disease, government mismanagement. The Trump administration's reckless trade policies have destabilized the economy, the Fed's inaction is making it worse, and the broader failure to address structural issues is setting us up for a disaster. And who's paying the price? You guessed it, the hard-working Americans who trusted the government to do its job. But don't worry, folks, because here at Boss Economics World, we're not just here to complain, we're here to call it like it is and demand better. It's time for the government to stop playing economic roulette with our livelihoods. It's time for the Fed to stop hiding behind uncertainty and start acting like the central bank of the world's largest economy. And most importantly, it's time for us, the people, to hold these clowns accountable before they drive the economy into the ground. That's all for today, economic warriors. If you're as fed up as I am with this government-made mess, smash that like button, subscribe to Boss Economics World, and share this video with every hardworking American who deserves better. And remember, folks, when the government screws up, it's up to us to clean up the mess. Stay sharp, stay informed, and I'll see you next time on Boss Economics World.